It is Monday, July 19th, 5:33, and I'm gonna open the Board of Public Works meeting. If I can get a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Waitman seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, do I need to read this announcement part of it? Do
We can,
Yeah.
we can have I'll make a motion to waive the announcement of open meeting recordings.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. We waived the reading of the Zoom,
Oh, the Zoom.
yeah,
Okay.
and then we just waived the open meeting. All right, option one, members of the public who wish to participate may do so by sending questions in the time indicated above. So I don't know if, did anybody receive, what were the questions? We're gonna go to the public comments, Gmail. Who monitors that, Ron? Oh, Tamika does. So did we get any kind of questions regarding?
I don't have access to that,
Oh.
so I can't speak to that, but that's been on here for as long as we've done Zoom.
Well,
So I don't think
I
that's,
think
we've something we've really been doing since the public has been able to participate in person.
the public comments, my understanding, is I used to get updates when somebody would use that email address from Anita or Damien,
okay.
if
So-
I'm
Yeah,
correct
I
on
don't
that.
think-
So I have not seen anything, so I don't imagine, I think Jeff's the only one on,
Mhm.
alright. Alright, so we are setting water and sewer rates for fiscal year 22.
Sorry, through the chair. Do you wanna approve the minutes or do you wanna do
Oh,
that after?
I'm sorry, that wasn't on my copy of the
Oh,
agenda.
I think it was at the very bottom. I don't know if,
Oh, maybe,
but anyway,
okay, yeah, if I can get
Yeah, Board of
motion
Public
to
Works
approve the minutes from
meetings.
May 13th,
Motion to approve the minutes from May 13th is written.
and do we have a second?
Waitman seconds.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I'm sorry, so on to setting the water and sewer rates for the fiscal year 22. Everybody had a chance to review the letter that was sent up to everybody from Joe on the rate sheet. Do you want to just give us kind of an overview of?
I'll do my best. So, the letter, the rate recommendation is in response to the budget that was passed at the recent annual town meeting. We looked at, the rates, we looked at, connection fees, and we looked at recent receipts to make a rate recommendation that would support the budget in question. We're asking for 10% for water and 4% for sewer. I've got a breakdown, I believe I sent everyone involved a spreadsheet as well as a letter. I just wanna call out some basic comments. First and foremost, we didn't raise rates in the pandemic. I know we talked briefly about the rate study at the last meeting, the last select board meeting. I have a copy of that if you need it. In that, rate study, one of the things that was recommended by the consultant and the accountant is that we regularly raise rates to make sure that we don't fall behind. We're able to keep up with, inflation and cost of doing business. Again, we held the line last year. I don't think the rate increases are excessive, and I think we've augmented them well with increases for connection fees so that we're respecting the fact that new people who are building houses are actually helping to invest in the system. Having said all that, I can take some questions.
Joe, is there any guide to I mean, I know because of the pandemic you didn't raise them, but is there any limits as far as how much you will raise them or on an average, or is it just all based on expenses and other related?
Most of it's based on expenses. We anticipate the water rate in the future is gonna go up because we're having trouble getting qualified operators. We also believe that the biggest challenge with the sewer rate is obviously transportation and treatment. We've made some good inroads on transportation. Hopefully we'll be able to discuss that in the future and get that number in check.
So are these increases typical for average, what you've seen previously?
Yeah, I would say they're average.
Okay.
I don't think they're excessive.
Through the chair. How long is this rate gonna be good for? 6 months? Year? 2
Yeah.
years?
We'll revisit them when we do the budget next fiscal. So this is good for 1 year,
Just for 1 year?
just for 1 year.
Okay.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
So I guess, just because this is an information through the chair that's included here, if people are watching at home, the projected impact on an average household is $36 year over year, because of this increase
For water.
for water.
Right, there's an increase for sewer as well, it's around $70, $75.
So it'll be about a total increase if you're on water and sewer of a little over $100.
Yeah.
That's usually what people are looking for when they
Right.
watch. So,
Over 4 quarters, so $25 a quarter.
Yep.
We do bill quarterly.
Okay.
Now, those numbers come from the rate study, but, I mean, they give me a large paper, we got a large paper document, but they also have a spreadsheet model, and you can actually input rate increases and see how it plays out, and that's what we use to estimate customer increases.
through the chair, if I may.
I just have one other quick statement,
Mhm.
and then, when the rate study was done, we had an active moratorium, and there were no water and sewer connections really being considered at that time. Since then, we've lifted the moratorium, not lifted the moratorium, but we did not renew it. Those increased connections have helped keep some of those rates down. Your question?
So, I guess just to follow up, I know the study did indicate basically our revenues and expenses aren't meeting each other, which it's embarrassing to have paid for a study for that conclusion. However, it did recommend regularly raising rates. I know we didn't last year. Is some of this to compensate for the fact that we didn't during the pandemic, or is this like this, for example, water being 10%, is 10% what you might project to be an average rate raising if we were to go back next year and have to raise rates again? Or do you think it'll be less than that 10%?
I honestly won't know until
Won't
we
be able
get
to-
through
okay.
this year. And water operations is facing some really stiff technical challenges right now with lack of operators. So what that cost is gonna play out, I honestly couldn't speak to that.
Yeah, I've seen that as a trend statewide too.
It's a trend nationwide, is what we were told when we met with DEP on Friday.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Carol, did you have something to say? Okay, please. All right.
I'll make a motion to raise rates according with Director Buckley's recommendations outlined here in his memo.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. Any other business for the,
If I may, I don't know if, with Joe here, if there's any conversation to be had with the water treatment operator, the water operators or anything, or if we should schedule that for a separate meeting. We weren't posted for that,
Yeah.
so, I know a lot has happened within the past week or so,
Yeah.
so.
well, I know you guys just met with DEP on Friday, so yeah, we didn't include that in the agenda, and I don't know how much interest it would be for people to, have an
Yeah,
opportunity.
but if
to
we're
see.
talking water sewer rates, and this water we're talking about, so I don't see why we can't at least talk about
To
it.
be honest, it's personnel. I'd rather have that as a separate agenda
Yeah,
item if we were
it's
going to discuss
hiring.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not
All
really
right.
on the.
Okay,
Well,
It's also really. I don't want to get a set of precedent that we're going to be micromanaging that level of.
So I think, through you, Mr. Chair, I think we can make a brief statement in general about what happened Friday, but I think that I would agree that there is going to be a much larger, more difficult discussion around the merits of this issue, but I think it would be fine for Joe just to give the basics of what transpired and the thoughts were at the DEP meeting, just so the board is up to date on that. And there really shouldn't be any debate or deliberation, but just a statement of what happened, I think is okay.
Is the board fine with that? Okay, Joe, you just wanna just give us kind of like where it sits right now?
of course. I did forward on an email to the co-chairs that spoke to what transpired with staffing levels at our water filtration plant. We scheduled an emergency meeting with our consultant, Weston and Sampson Engineers, and their services division, because we have concerns about our ability to staff our water filtration plant going forward. The personnel issue, as you mentioned, aside, the plant also needs some control updates, some standard operating procedure updates, basically everything you need to put in place to be able to put it out for bid or a request for proposal to have a company run it if we're unable to get qualified help. I copied DEP on that email, similar to the one you folks read, and they provided us with a representative. I would estimate we'll be meeting with both our consultant, the services provider, and DEP regularly over the next, probably every 2 weeks for the next couple months until we get it sorted out. I think to review the thing entire, because as you mentioned earlier, there's some personnel stuff. Would we have to go into executive session?
The personnel issue they know about, and there's nothing really to discuss, so
Okay,
I don't see what the discussion would really be about anyway, so there's no reason.
but there's enough, the issues are complex enough, we probably need to schedule a separate meeting.
Okay. And if you want to at the later meeting, if you feel there's a need to have the executive session about staffing, we can do it then, but I'm not sure that it's appropriate, to be honest with you.
Fair enough.
Just-
Any immediate questions?
If I could just comment just briefly, just to let you know who's in attendance Friday. It's myself, the DPW Director, DEP, and Weston and Sampson. We're all parties to the discussion on Friday, looking at potential options, both short-term and long-term. We toured the facility to look at the facility and what some of the needs, and discuss what some of the long-term needs of that facility might be. But this is the beginning of a process that I think is gonna play out over the next number of months to make sure that we have, as I said, both a short-term solution for plant operation and a long-term solution to upgrade some of the technology to make it less labor-intensive in the future.
Can I ask a general question,
Sure.
if I may, through the chair? I've seen this in a lot of municipalities are posting for folks to run water treatment. So this seems to be kind of an issue, and we had talked about this offline, Joe, about how it's hard to find folks with these qualifications. What has caused the shortage, in your opinion? Is it just people kind of aging out and retiring, or what's the deal with the shortage in this particular field?
I would suggest what you just implied, mostly retirements, and it's not something you can train for, like at a technical level.
Okay.
Most of the folks who go into the field have worked in water in some fashion, or worked in public works in some fashion, and then gone and done training, you know, 3 or 4 month training class, and through attrition and exams became certified to operate facilities. So it's not like you could go to a school and get those people. It's more of a industry shortage. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I'm just curious because there seems to be a lot of opportunity for people in this
There
field.
is, and we're actually both a benefit of that and a victim of that.
At meetings that I've attended with different nonprofits, agencies, states, and everything else, they've been looking at that and trying to do internships. They're trying to push it into trade schools,
Oh, yeah.
that like Bay Paths and other places, to try to encourage them to do that type of a program. And I think the state at one time was even looking at trying to pay tuitions towards education. I think that the big problem is a lot of people that similar to that field are somewhat in the engineering field, and it's a lot more lucrative to be an engineer than to run a water or a sewer plant. And I don't think there's a lot of kids that think I want to grow up and be a sewer treatment plant operator, unfortunately, because it doesn't have the.
One of the interesting things that's going on right now is it's almost become a bidding war for employees. So, you know, other people are offering higher salaries to steal it. So the big cities being able to offer some of the higher pays are stealing a lot of workers. So the smaller towns that don't offer quite the money they do are having a hard time keeping their staff. So you're seeing a lot of people, but I was talking to DEP about that, and they said they're seeing that statewide. It's all about who pays the most right now, and that's a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last time when we were talking about the last personnel change is that I had said we should look at interns and we should look at maybe trying to pay towards education to get somebody in the position and start training them. But now
We're actually in the process of training junior staff now
okay.
to see if they're up to the task. But even best case scenario, that's 6 months out.
Right, it's going to take time at this point. Leah?
If I may, through the chair, I think it's important also if we have an understanding as to the staffing levels that the town needs at the water treatment facility here. I think my sense is some of the concern is salary wise we're on the lower end of fair. But we expect a lot, and it's a lot of weekend work. We need the plant being operated 24/7, I believe. So, to have 1 or 2 operators 24/7, that means you're constantly working weekends and everything.
It's not 24/7, but
It is.
somebody has to be there every day of the
7
week.
days a week.
Right.
Sorry,
Available,
yeah.
Somebody has to be available every day a week, and
That's
I think
part of
it's
the,
three.
mind if I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's part of the things we have the consultant working on now.
Yeah.
The problem is designing and getting those updates to the facility will not happen anywhere near quick enough.
But I think if it's helpful for us to think about, okay, we realistically should have 3 or 4 individuals there. How does that look, and what do we need to do to get there?
It's
Apart from finding qualified individuals, but
well, it's tough. To Leah's point, to the chair, it's tough because we just had to raise rates, and it sounds like that's going to be a new cost emerging, and we just cut DPW hugely because the override didn't pass. So it's kind of in a difficult spot, and we're going to have tough conversations about.
What I
Some
can
of that
tell you is this budget includes a chief operator and 2 full-time operators.
Yeah.
And a skilled laborer. Okay, so that's 4 full-time operators, or 4 full-time staffers for the water department. As of July 30th, we'll have 1, and that's just the skilled labor. So the positions are budgeted in the rate you just passed. There was extra purchase service money put in at the 11th hour in the budget process to help cover or defray some of the cost to hire operators. I frankly don't think it's going to be enough, but there is some of that in this existing budget.
Okay.
Additionally, when we first, at the suggestion of the rate study, we borrowed money a couple years ago for capital improvements, and one of the line items in that capital improvement is plant updates. It was scheduled for the 4th year of our 5-year plan. It's been kicked to the front of the list, and they're working on it now. So there is some funds in place. We're taking a close look at the rates, but we'd probably have to go back and renegotiate that with the union. Luckily, the union contract will begin negotiations sometime after January.
It's up in July.
So it's gonna be a tough year for us, but we're not, I think we had some foresight across so far already.
Just if I could make one further comment based on what Joe said. We're just talking about that money from the capital budget. One of the discussions was that there are certain types of capital things you can do to where you make it less labor intensive. So you might not have to have somebody in there on a weekend. And that's one of the goals here, is to see if we can reduce the amount of labor we need to run the facility, particularly on weekends, so that it make it easier for us to find operators.
Have it more automated or something.
Yeah, correct.
Something that came up today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Rutland has a surface water supply. We have a reservoir and we treat that water. Our water's of pretty good quality, so it's very treatable. But if you want to compare it to, say, some of the towns around us, a lot of them use well water. And because they use well water, the treatment is not as intense. There's some disinfection, possibly some treatment for metals, but by means of example, you need like a T1. Here in Rutland, the chief operator is supposed to have a T3, and that's a lot of that has to do with how we do our supply. Because we have a surface water supply, we don't have any wells, and we don't have any connections to any other towns, we rely very heavily on that system. Again, we have good water quality. I don't think the town made poor investments. It's just we're limited because of the nature of treatment involved.
I know that a lot of the wells are dealing with PFO issues. I know in Princeton, I believe they have issues. So have we ever tested?
We haven't tested for PFAS, and so far we're doing very well.
Okay.
It isn't a concern for Rutland at this time.
Okay. So that's the new
That's a good thing.
thing, right? It's very expensive, not very treatable. All right. Anybody have any other comments? All right.
Thanks,
Motion.
Tom.
Thank you.
Motion to close the Board of Public Works.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you.